Hello, a very warm welcome. Welcome to the 6th European Jazz Network webinar. I'm Fiona Talkington. I'm a UK broadcaster, BBC radio, a writer and a curator of concerts, and you're very welcome to join us today. There's a fantastic online resource of all the previous webinars that have been happening as discussions have taken us through the COVID-19 crisis. Today's is called A House is Not a Home. Do closed borders mean closed minds? How do we go forward? What do we do? How do we look after our local communities and also re-energize global cooperation? And I'm delighted to have a fantastic panel joining me today from Norway, from Finland, from Poland, and from the United States. I'm going to introduce them all to you. What are the aims of today's webinar? Well, I hope that we can energize, that we can be positive, while taking into account a lot of the issues that have arisen over the last weeks, and in particular, over the last week, the issue of racial equality, of gender, of climate change. All these things must surely come into our thinking in this new possible blank canvas. So I'd like to introduce you to our panelists and ask them to just say a little bit about where they are today and how their work has been impacted. Maybe what have they been doing today? We'll learn in greater depth how things have been for them over the last weeks. So we have Jan Ole Otnæs from Norway, the managing director of the National JazzScene, fantastic venue in Oslo, for many years director of the Molde International Jazz Festival, and Jan Ole is also president of the European Jazz Network. We have Markus Partanen from Finnish radio, head of the EBU, the European Broadcasting Union's Jazz Network. Martyna Markowska from Katowice in Poland, programmer of JazzArt in Katowice, and a lot of the cultural programming there. And in New York, Ludovico Granvassu, founding editor of All About Jazz Italia, radio host and curator of concert programs as well. So let's go around the panel and say hello. Markus, hello, where are you speaking to us from today and what have you been up to?
Hello, I'm working from home. It's an eastern suburb of Helsinki called Herttoniemi, and today I've been editing few concerts that will come out, EBU exchange concerts, like from my colleagues from European Broadcasting Union, that will come out in the near future. And then I paid some salaries to freelancer journalists and same as ever, like during this quarantine, working mostly from home, but I go to the radio like 2 times a week or once a week when I have to do my own program. So I can't make the presentations from home, but for that reason, I must go to the radio, but mostly working from home.
Thanks, Markus. Martyna, how about you?
Hello, everyone. Well, we have very intensive time of preparing our World Music Festival, Gardens of Sounds, in Katowice. So the team is working hard on opening the institution, on defrosting, so-called. And for us, for the team that is involved in music events, the World Music Festival, Gardens of Sounds is our next step, how to rearrange it, do it online. And we are working recently on that. Thank you.
Thanks, Martyna. Ludovico, where are you talking to us from today?
Good morning, and thank you for the invitation. I'm here in New York, so I'm a few hours behind you. It's 11 o'clock. And yesterday I had my latest episode on MondoJazz, the program that I curate for Radio Free Brooklyn, which was dedicated to jazz, focusing on the civil rights struggle over the years, because as you can understand, it's a very topical situation now, which will then soon be appearing on All About Jazz, and working on organizing some virtual concerts with the main concern being how to ensure quality audio and video. So that's basically what has been keeping me busy. Thank you for having me.
And hello to Oslo and Jan Ole. And I know that you've already been able to do some programming. How are things in Oslo with you?
things are fine. I've been mostly working from home since March 13. The last few weeks, I spent a few days per week at the office. We had to close down mid-March and cancel and reschedule 4 concerts. And we have done 7 at venue, 2 of them with a small audience. The 2 last weeks, we have had exam concerts for the conservatory. And today we finished an 8-concert program starting on June 18, going to August 6, excuse me. So we start with Arild Andersen playing a solo concert on June 18, and we finish this series with Stian Westerhus and Cecil Dres doing a duo on August 8. So we're very happy to be back and to present live music. And from June 15, we can have up to 200 in the venue. The capacity is 300, but it will be reduced to 130. So we're looking so much forward to present live music in the summer where the festivals are closed down.
Thank you. That feels so positive to hear that things are happening, while some of us are looking to see what might happen, what are the possibilities, and yet to look to each other and seeing how progress is made. And baby steps at first, perhaps, but let's see where this goes. Let's just go back to the title of today's webinar, A House is Not a Home. And you know that song goes, a house is not a home when there's no one there. So are all our jazz houses empty? And how do we turn our jazz houses into homes again? Martyna, how do we make this house a home?
Yes, definitely. There are so many issues related with making a home again. And one concerns spatial capacity, of course, but what we thought about and what is maybe the most important here is really the mental capacity. So we know in Poland, in other countries which struggle not only with coronavirus, but with different political issues, that, well, when our focus is now mainly put on international collaborations, how to go on with them, how to rearrange the whole system. But in the meantime, other countries also struggle with how to cope with censorship, how to cope with different problems, in particular political problems in the countries, and how to preserve, how to keep the independent culture and independent music in the scene. So I think that we all have very different problems in every region of Europe, in the world. And I'm happy to share all these experiences, all the news and all the data from different countries, because our experience is definitely different from one country to another.
In all the many conversations, Martyna, that you have in trying to re-energize what you're doing to reawaken, have you come across many, many different attitudes, and have you come across obstacles?
Yes, definitely. Well, first of all, it's local politics, local policy that is different from in every region in Poland, or municipalities have different strategies. So we're all depending on something, on the central government, then the local government, then our own fears and ways of organizing the space. So yes, definitely we have different approaches and different. This is really a very complex issue in every place, in every institution, in every club, in every cinema theater. Yes, definitely there are very many complex options and issues.
Thank you. Markus, how do we turn the jazz houses into homes in Finland? And also, as a fellow broadcaster, what role does broadcasting have to play in helping to do that?
Well, one of the questions, of this webinar was that our national radios now playing only, music from their own country, and I sent a mail to my EBU colleagues and asked them how much more they are playing local music, and only one said that he has raised the amount of national music because of an order, from above of that company. But everyone else, it's just the same as ever. They are international, but of course they are playing, local music because national broadcasting companies, they are funded, from license fee or broadcasting tax. So it's one of their missions, to take care of the national culture. But I was a little surprised that only one of my colleagues said that he has raised the amount of, local music because of some kind of order. And I think that it has maybe happened more if you think of pop and rock and stations which use playlists. But, if I think of my jazz programs, if I would play only Finnish jazz, most of the listeners are hardcore jazz fans, and they go to the gigs and they buy Finnish records. So it would pretty soon turn very boring for them, if I and my freelancers would play only Finnish jazz. So I think at least I am as international as before. And that's about playing records. And of course, I have a 1 hour for concerts every week, and I use a lot of material from other countries via this European Broadcasting Union Jazz Concert Exchange. And I think that now we've lost the summer festivals in Finland. Next autumn and next winter, I must use even more, like European jazz from various countries, because I will lose, the summer concert recordings we were aiming to.
So have you felt under pressure, Markus, to do things in a particular way? Are you trying to reflect what's going on throughout the whole of Finland? Or are you looking to your global audience, to your colleagues in the European Broadcasting Union, to keep up that international flavour as much as possible?
Well, just Monday they started to open the little clubs in here. Now they can house some like 50 people, and possibly we are going, some of them, to record some concerts there. But I still have some reserve, from the last Tampere Jazz happening and the wintertime festivals. But I don't know. We will have a EBU Jazz Producers meeting next Tuesday, and we will address this issue that how can we keep this kind of a level. We exchange something like over 300 concerts per year. So at what point will that start to go down, and could we find, some more broadcasting time or like broadcasting rights, like all the concerts, so we could keep it all we all European radios, we could keep it as international as before. So it remains to be seen, but it's for sure that we will lose the recordings from the summer festival now.
Yes, absolutely. And I, as a broadcaster, I use a lot of EBU recordings. I'm very grateful to have them. In fact, this week I've been playing music recorded in Katowice. So, yeah, feeling that international pull very, very, very strongly. Jan-Ola, we were talking last week, and you mentioned that the title of today's webinar, "A House is Not a Home, Do Closed Borders Mean Closed Minds," was something that you had suggested right at the very beginning when you were planning these webinars. So what was the situation then? Why did you feel so strongly that this had to be an issue that you wanted to raise? You've told us a little bit about how you're turning your jazz house back into a home, but how did you see it back then?
Well, from the beginning, it was like Markus said, that a lot of musicians unions throughout Europe asked the national broadcastings to focus on national music, both to be a support for the national musicians, but also maybe for financial reasons, because all of them lost their jobs. So that was one issue. The other was that with the closed borders, we couldn't present international musicians. And that is also a bit scary, because this music form, jazz, is about exchanging ideas, music across borders, nationalities, and so on. So to be home with all the Norwegians is in one way fun, but I was a bit afraid that we should have a long period without presenting anything from other countries. And as it is for me now, the summer series we are presenting is purely Norwegian, which is great. The program I have for Victoria for the fall is, we have booked 70 concerts. 60% of that is Norwegian, and the rest is European and US. And I'm so eager to wait what will happen now mid-June when we possibly get some opening of borders, so we again can have musicians from Denmark, Sweden, Germany, France, US, UK, so on, and not only be by ourselves, and also to have Norwegian musicians playing with colleagues from all over the planet. That's what jazz is for me.
You have a very close network in Oslo of musicians and throughout Norway, a lot of communication between all the different jazz organizations. What are you hearing from ground level, from the grassroots, from musicians themselves, but also the support networks of sound engineers and so on, the whole crew? Well, what are people saying on the ground?
I mean, musicians, they're quite double on this, because not being able to play concerts in a normal way, they get more time to think, to write, and to create new ideas. So that's a good part of it. I mean, losing all the shows, the concerts, the possibilities to play live is very rough money-wise. That's the situation for the musicians. And we have also the same for technicians, for sound engineers, for that, all that part of the industry, and all the festivals that are cancelled. There's a lot of firms working with the infrastructure who is suffering very hard. And last week, one of the biggest companies doing stages, sound, light, went bankrupt. And that's a scary situation, because we fear that others also will go that way if if they don't get back to work again. The Norwegian government has put together a lot of measures to compensate for the losses, and some of this has been really good, some is not that good. So we hope that we still get possibility to get compensations for all the losses that the industry have had so far.
Thank you, Jan Ulla. And I think the next webinar in this series actually looks a lot at, it's called Work Song, and it will be looking a lot at all the behind the scenes, all the people who actually make sure that what happens on stage actually gets there. Ludovico, the scenes in New York must have been quite scary at times this week. Turning jazz houses into homes has perhaps not been at the top of people's minds, and yet culture is our lifeblood. Have you been pulled in many different directions this week? How has it been for you?
Thank you, Fiona. Well, of course, it's very special times, especially coming out of the COVID fatigue. One is already challenged, and these most recent developments are particularly worrisome. But going into the themes that you've been discussing from other national experiences, New York, in many ways, has always been its own microcosmos, and it's a scene which has a lot of foreign musicians that, however, live here. On the other hand, it's very difficult to enjoy performances, for instance, from European-based musicians. They can only perform in the US if they do have the privilege of enjoying some financial support for touring, because it's so prohibitive to come to the US because of the travel costs, but also I think there are some procedural costs, for instance, obtaining a waiver from the musician guild here. And so before you even show up in New York, you've already probably spent $2,000-3,000. That's very hard to recoup. So that's a situation which I think is going to be making it even more difficult for musicians from abroad to come now, at a time when all the clubs have been basically put on lockdown. And if we look at the physical space that the clubs have here, I don't see how they can be financially viable with a 20-25% occupancy. And they very often would be places which are small in size and in basements, and possibly they wouldn't even be compliant to European standards of safety and security. So I see that the live music is going to be challenged for quite some time now. However, this is also a place where there's really not been much public support for this form of art and arts in general. As a result, whereas on one hand you could say that there is a lifeline which is missing, on the other hand there is basically a body musician that has been well trained in self-reliance. And I think at this stage we've seen during the COVID pandemic a huge amount of support coming from the musicians themselves. They've created fundraisers, they've organized festivals, like for instance live from a living room. They've created, in collaboration with some of the venues, some funds to commission new work, like in the case of Jazz Coalition, which I think has issued the first round of grants. So there's a lot of activity to basically keep the homey feel alive during these difficult times. So I think it will take some time to go to something which is a resemblance of normal, and there are some structural difficulties. You were mentioning the most recent events, and once again, I think jazz has been on the front line in terms of raising awareness about the social-political problems that have been at the core of what's been going on. And as I was mentioning, by preparing this radio show for Radio Free Brooklyn, I could see how there's been a common thread through the years, which is that jazz has always been there as a commentary, as a catalyzer for events of this type of nature. So I expect that there would be a lot of music that would be coming out of this. It's of course it's a minor consolation, but it's certainly a silver lining. And one can look not only at the works of people like John Coltrane with Alabama, or Nina Simone with Mississippi Goddam, but also more recent work, which already showed this level of, I'd say, connection with the reality, like recent works by Ambrosia Kimusier or Terence Blanchard, Hurricane, and all focusing on civil rights struggle, because it's still here, as we can see. And whereas music always moves forward, society sometimes seems to be getting stuck or even regressing. But I think we can always rely on music to kind of like give us a chance to stop for a moment and reflect.
That's very true. Thank you, Ludovico. And sometimes the wider audience, the general public, or the people consuming a lot of the news as it's going on from different countries, perhaps overlook the fact that culture is there, and artists from whatever genre are actually responding and doing things, and that culture leads. It's not, as so many politicians might think, just about entertainment. It is our cultural lifeblood. It's so important for how we continue in the world. You raised there a lot of the digital elements that have been happening, and I don't know about you, but I've been absolutely overwhelmed by people who've been doing house concerts, who've been doing such amazingly imaginative things, and partly born out of this sort of rabbit in the headlights of, we can't go and earn our livings, we can't go and play, we want to play with other people, what should we do? We need people to remember that we're still there. So what do? Of course you go online, and then you get better at it, and then you start using your imagination and bringing different collaborations together online. And I think during months and weeks of lockdown, people have been very glad and grateful of something to do. Maybe there are new audiences out there that are just wanting to see what's going on in the world and hearing new things. I wonder what you all think about the fact that many new audiences have been coming to online events, but may think, well, I can just switch that on and watch for free. And will they expect the arts to be for free? And what should musicians be doing? This is sometimes out of desperation. We need to do something. Please look at us. What can we do? but we also need to pay people properly, and we need to find the funding for that. Martyna, too much online, not enough, and how do we educate a public?
Yeah, well, I think as far as we see, we are all missing the contact, the physical contact. And I remember that a couple of webinars ago, there was discussion about the venues and about the future of the events. And Andre Henkin from New York, he mentioned that jazz is not based on this online internet experience, but the chemistry and this vibes among the people. So this is definitely that we are missing the most. Well, everybody knows that we cannot do that for now. Well, now Jan Ole can start in Norway. We will still have to wait. Now slowly in Poland there is possibility of organizing events. But well, we are just trying out, and everybody is very unsure, insecure about the next steps. So yes, I think that I saw like so many things so far, and at some point I was also too overwhelmed by that. However, we all know that this is the way that we have to go. It's good that at least this way is possible, that we didn't experience the pandemic, the coronavirus, maybe 30 years ago, that there wouldn't be any option. So it's good that we have this new audience. Our events are visited by people from different continents. That would never happen. Also, Andre mentioned that then there was bass solo that was visited online by several hundreds people. That maybe that would never happen in real time. So there are different advantages for sure. And I just an hour ago, we had very inspiring talk with artists from Poland and Italy, and we are still trying to pursue this international collaboration. So the ways that we are, this is our role, curators, who really have to now we really need to force ourselves and find these ways. I also have very deep talks with Nadine Deventer from Berlin Jazz Fest, because she really needs this finding the way, analog way of making international projects together. So yes, it's definitely too much, but this is the only option. And as long as we don't find a new solution, or we are not allowed to travel, or the flights will not return, so this is perhaps the only way. Well, I think that curators, institutions, artists in the whole world, they really showed how creative they are. These balcony concerts, in yard concerts, and all the other methods, they were very inspiring. And I think that we learn from one another, from each other, how to cope with this situation. So yes, we'll still be online, I think, forever as we are. But yeah, definitely, I think that everybody misses this contact. Even if there is 5 people in the audience, there is definitely different vibe than just playing to the empty hall.
Takes me back to that song again, a chair is still a chair when there's no one there. You know, in our venues, even if they're not full, the people are there and listening. And as Markus also knows, Ludovico, as radio broadcasters, we don't get to see our audience very often, but we know they're there. We can feel that strength coming back to us. So there's an engagement with the audience as well. But digital, free or funded, Jan Ole, there's been some wonderful concerts that we've seen online, but it's not just about the musicians. But if our venues, if our jazz houses are to stay open and to continue to contribute to the musical community, then how do venues brand themselves? How do we keep the identity? I know you've already for some years had live streaming from Victoria, so we know that it's hosted by you, but is this something that's increasingly important to keep the brand of a venue alive?
When we started to do live streamings in 2014, it was to give people around the globe the possibilities to see what happened. And it was a supplement to what we did live at the Victoria. And that has been for free all years. And and the musicians that got their regular fee, and they also own the content, so they can use it the way they want it. So it's been a kind of promo for them and important for us. And we have kept some of the songs they played on our YouTube channel. When we opened up now in April to do things, we booked the artists that already were on the program. They got their fee to play these concerts, and we had the possibility for the audience to donate money for these concerts. And we did 8 concerts, and we had an average of 1,500 euros per concert in donations, which was quite okay. And musicians got half of it, and we kept half to pay for the streaming. We will not do any streaming this summer. It will be live, and it will be only for those who buy the tickets. I know we are having a discussion about what we are doing in the fall. We might continue to do some live streaming, but this will be with payment. You have to buy a ticket to get access to the. I think it's we cannot continue to give away all the music for free. That's, I mean, the killing of the music scene. So for us, those who buy a ticket to see a live stream in the fall, cheaper than going to the venue, but still they have to pay. I think that's the way we have to go on if we should do streaming. There has been some very positive experiences in Norway in April and May. People have paid a lot to see concerts because they haven't been able to go and see them live. So in one instance, it was sold tickets for 20,000 euros, which is more than they could sell if it was a live show from a small venue. So I think the combination of live shows and stream shows will be what we will see in the future. But I will also think that, as I said on this stream on Monday with from Moods in Zurich and Porge and Bess, it has to be high quality, many cameras, good lighting, a good production. That's the thing we have to do to maintain this in a proper way, and it has to be paid.
Absolutely, and I'm sure I can sort of hear around the world musicians applauding when you say that, because there's been so much concern and worry about how the self-employed artists and all crews would continue to put food on the table at home. It's as basic as that. Markus, again, coming from a broadcasting background and seeing that suddenly, people are going online and having fantastic content, but quite overwhelming at times. What's the balance between paying for this content and charging a fee, and what are people's expectations, do you think? Maybe the new audiences are perhaps thinking, well, we can just listen to music for free, and in fact they've been maybe streaming on some of the streaming channels for like next to nothing. Where do you think the audiences sit with this?
I think, just as Jan-Ole said, it's very fair that the people who just watch the stream pay something for it, because I asked 2 clubs in Finland that had been streaming concerts, and now they continue it with a small amount of audience, but they must pay the copyright societies, of the streaming. And someone of them said that they just can't stream it in Finland because international streaming would be so expensive. I think this changes, from country to country, the contracts they have with the copyright organizations. And of course, national broadcasting companies, people fund it via a license fee or a broadcasting tax. So in a way, they are paying for it. But radio, in a way, has been always kind of free. And but what the musicians get, the copyright compensation, what national broadcasting companies pay, it's much more than the commercial radios pay if they have jazz programming. I don't know, some of them of course have, but usually, at least if I ask my EBU colleagues, it's the kind of a national broadcasting company's duty, to play jazz. And I think that in what the Finnish broadcasting company pays to musicians compared to commercial ones is 10 times more than the commercial. So it's the copyright money for musicians from national broadcasting companies. That's pretty important. And then that, of course, goes to the EBU concert fee exchange. Like Tampere Jazz happening is always ordered like 15 to 20 radio stations. I don't exactly know how many of them play it, but think that you play your own concert with just your music and 20 radios play the whole concert. You get a lot of copyright compensation from that. So I think that's very important to keep this concert exchange going, and that it's international, that Finnish bands are heard, abroad, and Austrian or Norwegian bands are heard in Finnish radio, because that's been for a long time, that's been a very good money for the musicians from national broadcasting companies.
Very good points. Thank you, Markus. And Ludovico, of course, radio, which we can access via the internet, so many radio stations around the world, but this issue of streaming is already border crossing. We're able to just hear it. So the digital radio, all the online input, borders are not closed. So that's a very good thing. But the issue of compensation and money, how do we deal with that? How do we make sure that things are fair and just while keeping borders open?
Thank you, Fiona. Yeah, these are all questions that I think we're all learning to cope with. In many ways, the new scenario that came up during the pandemic, it's one that has forced us to think or rethink, and we're learning as we go. My initial impression was that some of the content that was shared by performers online, very often on social media like Instagram or Facebook or things of that nature, came as a result of their need to let the music that was inside of them out and to reach out an audience. And I think that was a very natural phenomenon. But on one hand, this allowed for a certain spontaneity and quaintness, if you wish, which I think especially at the beginning was very important. But as we look forward towards the coming months or years, I think we need to realize several aspects. One is that the amount of preparation that goes in a good performance is as important for a live performance as it is for a real gig. And so over time, there will be a need to ensure what Jan Ole was mentioning, at high quality and high quality for both audio and video. It needs to have promotion, and you cannot just announce a gig, let's say a couple of hours in advance, like you do for a tour. You have to put together the real promotion, and you have to let people find out. In this regard, for instance, at All About Jazz, we started a calendar reserved only for live streaming. And we've seen an explosion of entries. And initially, there were just a few from very localized areas, but now there's many of them, which means that the musicians are embracing this. And in some cases, we do see that they are free. In other cases, we do see that they're creating a paywall that allows them to charge. This again is a level of, let's say, a professionalization of the live streaming that I think is important and can be harnessed for the benefit both of the musicians, but also of the venue, if they feel that that's something they can explore. For instance, one could imagine that you may have the first song for free for everybody, but then from the second song onwards, you may decide to charge, and that could be a good balance between allowing access, but at the same time generating a revenue. We are lucky to live in cities which have so far have been having very vibrant calendars for live performances, but not everybody lives in major cities with beautiful jazz clubs. There's so many people out there that they are striving to find good music, and if all the major venues were to integrate their live performance calendar with a streaming calendar, that would open up access to others. And this would have to be done in a way that perhaps generates revenue for both musicians and the venues. And finally, I do think, or at least in this phase, I don't know how sustainable it is, that there has to be an element that differentiates the viewing experience of a live stream event from whatever you can do at any time, anywhere you want. How is it different to look at live concerts on YouTube as compared to a live stream? You therefore, I think, have to make an extra effort to engage the audience. And my feeling has been that when we've organized these live events, we frame them as house concerts, not only because they were performed from a home of a musician, but also to create that level of intimacy that also you would be able to generate in a real house concert. And that was through creating feedback, for instance, through the chat for the audience to be part of it. And there would be kind of, I don't want to say a Q&A, but an interaction between the musician and the audience that you don't have if you're just watching something on YouTube or on TV. So I think there is potential. Over time, I would hope that we go back to the normal that we were used to, with an additional component that perhaps was not, let's say, as present before, which is that live streaming can provide some additional opportunities for people that don't live near venues at times that perhaps are not accessible to certain people because maybe they are night workers and they cannot go out to see performances. So why not have an extra set, for instance, very early in the afternoon, maybe just after sound check, which a venue can organize and can stream and maybe open up an audience that otherwise would normally not be available. So I don't know. There's a bunch of ideas that I think will need to be tested as we go. But as always, crisis forces you to think and rethink.
Absolutely, and some really, really positive ideas there. And I'm hoping that people dropping in on this webinar will be able to take some of those ideas and apply them to where you are. You're watching, if you've just joined us, the 6th European Jazz Network webinar. It's called A House is Not a Home. Do closed borders mean closed minds? And do feel free to comment. There will be an opportunity for questions coming up. You're very welcome to this webinar, and the panel represents Poland, Norway, Finland, and the United States. I wonder, are we creating a blank canvas? You were just saying, Ludovico, that I hope we can go back to where we were, but if you talk to people perhaps in the health services, they're saying this will never be the same again. So there's an element of wanting to embrace our communities, the loyal audiences, the loyal venue audiences, the loyal festival audiences, and people want to go back in a sense. But if things can't be quite the same as where they are, is this blank canvas an opportunity to really look at who are our audiences? And how do we actually embrace the very important issues of race, of gender, of equality, of all the socioeconomic factors? Is this a golden opportunity to build new things for our future audiences as well? Jan-Ole, a blank canvas?
If not totally blank, it will be a new canvas. And I think it's important that we try to get back on things that we know and that are successful. At the same time, we have to use this opportunity to do other things. I mean, what has happened with the stop of flying could maybe do things to have a more green way of touring and presenting things. I think also I'm curious to see how the audience reacts when we come back to normal. Will the same audience come back? Will we have new audiences? And how do we react to this? How will the touring be? Will the musicians still be touring as bands, or will they be touring as individuals, incorporating with local and national musicians like it was a lot of in the 60s and 70s? I think there's a lot of opportunities that we have to grab and to paint a new canvas with the new things that are happening.
Thank you. Martyna, you've got a blank canvas in front of you. What do you do? What do you build from the ground upwards now, in incorporating all those issues which we've been made very aware of in the last week, but all the issues we know that need to be put to rights? You've got an open check. You can do what you want, I wish, but what would you do?
Yes, I would definitely admit that what Janula said, it's really important that just continue with these good examples, find new solutions. Well, for our festival, both social issues were very important before the pandemic. We are still the only Polish festival that joined the Key Change initiative. So it's a gender balance festival. And well, we did a lot of social work with local communities, with the jail, with disabled children, and so on and so forth. And I think that now, since they are also excluded during this time, we think about these communities even more. Now, well, we couldn't organize anything during JazzArt apart from online streaming. Our solist pianist Joanna Duda played during the online streaming. However, there is the question about maybe finding this, I will just make just a crossover genre concerts. And I think that maybe not only crossover genre concerts, but even like cross arts initiatives, cross arts projects. Well, as a JazzArt, even as the title says, we are quite interdisciplinary from the very beginning. So this is something that also saved, in a way, our festival this year, because we were able to show online exhibition by Henning Bolta, and that was really something totally different. It was not another online streaming and concert from bedroom or from the kitchen or wherever there was. But yeah, Henning really gave us his exhibition that are in Katowice in the gallery, and they are waiting for being exhibited, they're being exposed. We showed that in online form. And Henning, during the concert of Joanna, he managed to illustrate that concert. So we even tried, and thanks to him, we maintained the level of interaction even online. So I think that these solutions are very important. During our think tank webinars, or our sessions with EJN members, we talk about it a lot, how to pursue with interdisciplinary projects, how to find new venues, how to connect with these new communities. But definitely, coming back to your question, Fiona, that these excluded communities, that they don't have normal access to online streaming to internet services like inmates, for instance, we really have to find another solution, what to do, especially for them or for the children. They were not in school. They also cannot use maybe some internet, like disabled children that we were working previously. So I think that this is the biggest challenge for us.
Thank you. Markus, do you get a sense of the audiences throughout Finland? Are they open to building up from a blank canvas again?
Well, yeah, I think the audience for the jazz programs, it's kind of the same, but I've seen a little raise in the numbers of the when they can listen it afterwards, like 30 days on demand. I can see a little raise in that number, but of course in other programs too. And but what should we do, like in the future, if the situation continues? Finnish Broadcasting Company had this series of streamed TV concerts. They were first streamed, and then a few days afterwards they were on this cultural channel, and it was mostly pop and rock. And there was one jazz concert, Verneri Pohjola's new album release concert, and so it was very good to have at least one jazz concert in that series. And now they're gonna. The Nordic embassies in Washington, D.C., United States, they can't arrange their normal summer festival with live bands. So they will have a live stream festival, stream concert, and Verneri's concert will be there. So that was a kind of a good chance for Verneri to be in that series. So if this situation continues, I would like to see the broadcasting companies to put more budget to their kind of own production, be they studio productions or their own concerts. So because that would be a good way to support the jazz community.
Thank you. And Ludovico, let me give an open check to you to do whatever you would like, whatever you think would make the world a better place and encourage this international cooperation, which, well, we all believe in because we're here, but maybe you can change people's minds too.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, The way I see it is that the jazz audience is a very devoted audience. Most likely, it's also a very committed audience. It's not casual or random. I don't have any doubts that it will continue to be as committed and as driven as it has been in the past. But since we're talking about a house and homes, I think this might be an opportunity to then add a couple of rooms to the house to make it possible for people from other places through streaming, for instance, and a streaming that is channeled towards generating revenue for musicians and venues to also get access. So as I was saying earlier, I think we are learning as we go, and we've, however, realized that there is a potential that perhaps had been underestimated before. Nobody will ever say that a live stream event will be as rewarding as a live performance. But nevertheless, there may be a whole bunch of people that will never have the same amount of access to live events as those who live in cities near venues, which would be enticed and maybe decide to move to a city where there is a venue. But nevertheless, they basically would be given a chance. I always feel that jazz is kind of music that doesn't get the exposure it deserves in terms of quality, but anybody who has given that access gets the spell and then stays. And therefore, I really think that we perhaps can take this opportunity to capitalize on this and generate a new audience that will, I think, become a devoted audience.
I love that image of adding some extra rooms to the house, of building an extension on, so that this becomes a very valid way of going forward, about not saying that it's either online or live, but a mixture, so that we can embrace much wider audiences and make it available to people who wouldn't otherwise, through all sorts of reasons, be able to access this music. It's our hour is almost up, and if anyone has got any questions or thoughts that you'd like to share with the panel, this would be the moment to send them in. This is obviously a discussion that will continue, and as I said earlier, you can catch up with all the webinars online. But I wonder, the spirit of international cooperation has had such an amazing effect on the music. We've had so many wonderful collaborations that have come together because musicians hear other musicians online, on the radio, they meet at festivals, there's a chemistry, and they want to come together. Do you think that the COVID-19 pandemic will have proved to have an effect on the jazz music that's being made itself? An open question to all of you. Will we hear new ways or new things in the music? Who would like to come in? Jan-Ole?
Yeah, I think so. And I hope so. I mean, it's been like that forever. But I think this will do a lot to develop new projects, new interesting things that will happen. Maybe more collaboration than it has been for a while. So that's my hope, and I think it will be like this. I think we, as promoters, should encourage to do this. By putting together, giving the opportunities to work together, not only import a band, but import a musician and have them to work with the local community.
What pleases you about bringing people together? These are sort of personal issues. You are all not just roles, but you are all people who have a very personal response to music. What makes your heart sing, Jan-Ole, when you bring people together?
I mean, I was lucky enough to be the director at the MondoJazz Festival for 12 years, and we had a program called Artists in Residence, where we had focus on one musician. And they had to work with new guys. They couldn't just come and present what they have done. And seeing one of the greatest moments was when Michael Becker and the Bulgarian saxophone player
Trifon
Trofanov met on stage in Molde. Michael Brecker was his biggest idol, and Brecker had never heard Trifon. And when he started to play, the two guys were crying on stage in respect to each other. And seeing those moments, that's the thing we want to create.
I was there. I remember. Yeah. I will never forget that moment. And I'm sure we've been through amazing times like that. Markus, what makes your heart sing?
Yes, I like international collaboration, even in the kind of a radio production scene, because for many, many years it has been like we do some 10 to 12 studio recordings per year, mostly with Finnish band, because more and more Finnish musicians are inviting their friends, musicians from abroad, and they go to a studio for 2 days and they make a tape, and very often they buy the tape out as a record. So we lost 2 that kind of a sessions this spring because the guys couldn't travel to Finland, and now they are Finnish band, in fact, just during this week. So I would really like to see that the traveling restrictions get easier so that the international musicians can come to their friends and go to the radio studio and do these tapes. And of course, yes, it's international. And, the first one, just in short, when we had an international musician in Finnish Broadcasting Company studio was in June '62 when Albert Eiler visited Helsinki and went to studio with Herbert Katz, the guitarist. It was the first time Albert Eiler was recorded in a studio setting. It are 3 first tracks in this Revenant Records, Albert Eiler box, so check it out. But there's a long tradition to that, and I really would like to see that happening again and get lost of the traveling restrictions.
I feel shivers going down my spine, because those moments that are just totally magical, and now this energy of we all have to meet again. So somehow we have to bring people together, and the travel has to happen. There's a determination. We have to be patient and do things in a safe way. Martyna, what makes your heart sing?
Well, I mentioned those community projects that we have in the jail, and I think that every time when we have this final concert of the festival for the inmates, and usually there are female inmates in Katowice prison, there is always the moment that is very emotional. And I think that the musicians are always completely overwhelmed by that. Some of them, they are first of all very brave to perform. And then the inmates are open to interact and to react for this music. So this is something definitely that we are looking forward. Everybody's working together, and this is really once in a lifetime experience that's happened every year. However, this year we couldn't make it for obvious reasons. So I think that this is the moment that I'm looking forward to the most.
What a fantastic project. I hope it does continue to happen. Yeah. Ludovico, is your heart singing?
Always. I think, but to answer your question is, listening is a kind of a very inner experience. You put on some music, you discover some music, put the headphones on, close your eyes and travel. And then if this music really touches you, the thing you want to do right away is to share it. I grew up making tapes for my friends, and then a radio show is like making tapes for friends you haven't met yet. And organizing a concert is making tapes for friends you're going to meet in person. And I think there's joy in sharing and finding out that, the music that you've loved touches people, and especially when you have a discovery of something which you find completely remarkable. For me, albums like Here Today by Alicia Hall-Moran, or A Beautiful Brazil albums always blow my mind, and I have to play them 75 times to kind of absorb them. But then I want to share them. And going back to the question that you were asking, I'm sure there is music being generated as we speak because of the situation we're in. Jazz has always been distilling life and turning it into beauty, and especially when it's challenging, it comes out even more beautiful. And like you have an incubation time for COVID, I think we have incubation time for jazz. And I think give it, you know, a couple of weeks or a couple of months, and we'll start seeing the amazing new work that is being brewed as we speak. And finally, the last observation is perhaps that one thing that we can take away from this time of the these times that we're living is that I think we may have discovered a way to activate the passion of jazz fans, because I think a jazz fan tends to be, on average, more passionate about the music that they love, and they're engaged and possibly at times borderline obsessive about it. But now that they were able to find out that when they were, for instance, sending out contributions for live performances, which were typically on a volunteer basis, because some people may not have a job and so you can't charge everybody, they also felt there was something more than just like paying for music. It was part of like showing support and feeling part of something. And I think if we are able to harness that, we might have a grassroots movement that perhaps was implicit before, but now it's more. I don't really know how to do that, but it's just a feeling that I have that I still have to articulate. But how can we then turn all these fans into champions and activists for the music that we love?
Thank you. And of course, it's very often the feelings that we have and the belief that it can happen that energizes turning it into reality. It's just about time for us to go. So I'm going to ask you for a brief 30-second last comment. And let's go back to the song which inspired the title of this webinar, "A House is Not a Home." And there's a line in that, "I'm not meant to be alone. Turn this house into a home. Let's all do that." So if there are venues, promoters, musicians, so many people who are struggling now through this and wondering what we can do, what would be your last 30 seconds of advice? A little bit of jazz wisdom. Jan-Ole, a quick 30 seconds.
I think we have to be optimistic, look forward, create new music again, and present it to the audience. I think it's so important that we try to be optimistic now.
Thank you. Martyna?
Yes, I think that the words of our Nobel Prize Literary awarded writer Olga Tokarczuk in her article after receiving the award, the Nobel Prize, she said that just be gentle to each other, because this is the human experience that we have in jazz. And above all the, I think that technical issues or even musical or spatial issues, I think that really this experience, like being gentle, kind to each other, it's something very universal for any genre, for any type of art.
Absolutely. Markus, what's your bit of advice?
Yes, just stay strong, and jazz will survive. You know, it has survived so many times, many crises, and changed its habits and forms, and adapt to new situation. It will adapt to this one, and things will get better, and jazz will be the first ones to survive. You know, there's this gloomy joke that after a total nuclear war, the first things that would survive would be rats, but I'm sure that the next one would be jazz.
I'm sure you're right. Ludovico.
Well, home is where your heart is. So as long as we keep our hearts strong, then I think that there's no doubt that we can rely on jazz. And as I said, it's music that has been there, sometimes even fueled by difficult times. So I think I'm looking forward to listening to whatever is coming up in the next few months or years. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you so much to all of you. I feel inspired and energized by all of your words. Martyna, Markus, Ludovico, Jan-Ole, thank you very much for your time today. I wish you all health and happiness and lots of jazz, but thank you for your time. We've come to the end of today's webinar. Do keep the discussions going wherever you are, and this one will be available online afterwards for you to watch back to and to contribute to. The next webinar for the European Jazz Network will be on Monday, next Monday at 1700 Central European Time. It's called Work Song. It's a look at all the activities, all the jobs that carry on behind the scenes, and contributions from the United States, from the Netherlands, from Finland, and from Bosnia and Herzegovina. And the moderator will be UK broadcaster and writer Kevin Legendre. So don't miss that. Thank you for joining us today. I hope we all see each other again very soon. Keep playing jazz, and goodbye for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much.